Let's see how we're doing with forming conditional statements in the if-then form. Number one, what did you get? To the equity bars. Start the day right. I've got number 1, number 17, and number 21. Number 1's over here. Number 17, where's number 21? Okay, go.
If a car has a leaking antifreeze, then it has a problem.
Okay, what did you put? So go ahead and read it again. Okay, what did you put, Michaela? Very good. If a car is leaking antifreeze, then it has a problem. Very good. Number 2, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We got numbers 8, 21, and 23. There is no 23, so number 8, number 9, and number 21. Where's number 8? Number 9, number 21. Go. Okay.
If an animal is a new dog, then we can.
Okay. If a dog is old, then you cannot teach it new tricks. All the ways that they expressed it is okay as long as you have the correct phrase. That's the hypothesis and the correct conclusion. Number 3 was probably the most challenging out of the 3 of them. Anyone want to just volunteer, get away from the equity bars for a moment? We'll start with Davis, Zabari, and then Alicia.
If it is a vein, then it is a blood vessel that carries blood towards the heart.
Okay.
If blood goes to the heart, it is being carried.
Okay.
If a blood vessel is a vein, then it carries blood towards the heart.
Okay. So we got 3 different perspectives on it. And so the hypothesis was a blood vessel carries blood toward the heart. The conclusion is that it is a vein. Now, this is where we will start to have issues. You have to have factual background knowledge to know what actually makes sense. If you don't know anything about biology or the systems, then you wouldn't know which way it went. So that's what made that challenging. Everyone knows a dog and doing tricks. Even if you don't have a dog, you've heard this or you've seen it. So that's not hard to figure out or even imagine. But what you didn't know was that there's different types of blood vessels, and one of them is a vein. And so if a blood vessel carries blood toward the heart, it's called a vein. Then there's another kind that carries blood away from the heart. Does anyone know what that's called? Kayla? I hope so. I think so. I actually have no idea. I knew there was one. I think it's an artery. Is that what you were going to say? Yeah, so we got veins and arteries, and they carry blood to and from the heart. Thank you. All right, so you had to have that background knowledge to make this work. Are there any comments, questions, concerns about the warm-up? Anything at all? Because we are going to build from here. So, I introduced the objectives yesterday. The objectives were to identify, write, and analyze the truth values. But I also had up that the goals were to be able to write the inverse, converse, and contrapositive, but we didn't do that yesterday. Now we're going to do it today. The vocabulary is all the same, except we didn't introduce negation, converse, inverse, and contrapositive, but now we're doing it today. So, first we start with a foundation idea, negation. So, a negation is when you add the word not to a phrase or statement. So, if the statement is called P, then the negation is called not P. Here's an important notation that you will be using for the rest of the year. That little symbol means not. And you read it, not P. If you have a true statement and you negate it, you turn it into a false statement. If you have a false statement and you negate it, you turn it into a true statement. And the idea of negation is one of the foundations for the related conditional statements that we're going to write. And so that's where we are going, related conditionals. So we learned and absorbed the idea of writing a conditional statement. It's a statement that can be written in if-then form. So that's what we already know. We actually spent 2 days on it, maybe even more, because we did an introductory activity and we were introduced to this notation, and then we explored it more formally. From that statement, the if-then, we can create 3 other statements that are called related conditionals. The first one is called the converse. The converse is made by flipping the hypothesis and the conclusion. The hypothesis is always P and the conclusion is always Q. You can flip it around, and so that's why we have if Q, then P. That is called the converse. The second related conditional is called the inverse. The inverse, now we go back to the original. The inverse is formed by negating the hypothesis and the conclusion, and that's why we see the symbol, if not P, then not Q. And lastly, the contrapositive. The contrapositive is formed by doing everything we did. So the contrapositive is you take the original, you flip the hypothesis and conclusion, and add in the word not. Now, there are 3 major ideas for you to remember and to keep straight. Which one is which? I'm pretty sure that you're going to do this enough times that you'll probably just remember. But to help us along, there's a couple of simple things you can do to help yourself remember. I would focus on the word inverse. Personally, that's how I remember all of it. The prefix in, you should already know, means in means what?
Opposite.
Chris? In means not. In means not, and so you should be able to recall that inverse means you put in the word not. From there, the rest is actually not too hard because contrapositive is by far the longest word. It's also a compound word, contrapositive. And so what you're doing is you're compounding the 2 different ideas, the flipping of the hypothesis and conclusion and the negation. So if you can just focus on that this is the not, then you'll automatically know that the converse is the other one, and the contrapositive is going to be the combination of the 2. If that helps, great. If it doesn't, figure out another way to remember. Like I said, you're going to do it so many times, you'll probably just end up remembering. So are there any comments or questions about how to form these different statements? So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start by forming them, but that's actually the easy part, because it's kind of procedural, in that if you just follow the procedure, you'll get the result. The hard part is interpreting, and so that's really where we're going to spend most of our time. So, example 1A, and there will be a 1B on the next page. Yeah, I mean, my rule has been for my mature quasi-high school students to use your judgment. You know, write what you need to write. unfortunately, there's just so much information that there's only so much you can do, but if you leave out something critical, then going back to it, you'll be lost. So in this case, you're probably fine just writing the actual conditional statement, which is what I have in green here. If an animal is an adult insect, then it has 6 legs. The rest you can get away with just reading. But you have to read because this is the type of instructions you're going to be given, and you need to be familiar with what you're being asked. So we're actually being asked to do 2 things. To write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive, but then to also find the truth value of each one. Let's start out with the procedural, just writing them. So let's start with the converse. And yeah, you're going to have to label things. It's going to be a lot of writing. Your hand's going to get tired. I'll be honest with you. I've been writing up on the board. It's kind of tiring. You know, we'll deal with it though. So the converse. We flip-flop the hypothesis and the conclusion. So the original statement is, if an animal is an adult insect, then it has 6 legs. We need to flip-flop it has 6 legs with animal is an adult insect. If an animal has 6 legs, then it is an adult insect. And that is the converse. Any questions about that?
So the converse is just basically switching the conclusion.
That is it. The inverse. Now we go back to the original. If an animal is an adult insect, then it has 6 legs. And insert the word not in the hypothesis and in the conclusion. If an animal is not an adult insect, then it does not have 6 legs. And so the inverse comes from not and not. Anyone have any comments or questions about inverse? So like I said, it's kind of procedural. You do have to know the English language fairly well to know how to write things. Like, you can't say that it is not have 6 legs. Like, you have to know how to convert certain words to other words. What did I say? No. If an animal is not an adult insect, if an animal has 6 legs, then it is an adult insect. Nope, that's right. You'll get used to it. And then finally, the contrapositive. Now we do both actions. We're going to flip-flop the hypothesis and the conclusion and put in the word not. Or you could look at the inverse and take what you wrote as the conclusion, put it in the hypothesis, and take the hypothesis and put it in the conclusion, however you want to say it. So, if an animal does not have 6 legs, then it is not an adult insect. Comments, questions, concerns about any of these related conditionals? Yes.
So basically, we're kind of just writing it anyway, kind of like the hypothesis and the conclusion.
We're rearranging them in all the different ways we can rearrange them, basically. Is that what you mean? Okay. But you got to keep them straight. All right, so now, no other questions about how we form these. So now the challenging part. So this is where my sign outside the door is really important. This is where intellectual beast mode is going to be important, because I'm telling you right now, you're going to get confused. And if you don't, then you're probably not human. So now we're asked to use the science fact, which is contained in this little fact box, to determine the truth value of each statement, including the original. So we're going to start with the original statement, the original conditional statement. If an animal is an adult insect, then it has 6 legs. We need to determine whether that is true or false. So I want you to look at it, look at the science fact, and decide for yourself whether you think it's true or false. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's true. Don't put your thumb up because other people put their thumb up. Stick with your own thoughts. Okay? So we got maybe 2/3 to 1/3. So this is a true statement. It is true because it is supported by the facts. If an animal is an adult insect, then it has 6 legs. Right here it says adult insects have 6 legs. So if I pick up an animal and it's an insect, because I know it is, then it must have 6 legs. That is a true statement. We cannot find a counterexample. If I pick up an adult insect, there is no case of it not having 6 legs. That must be true. Remember, the only time a statement is false is if we have a true hypothesis with a false conclusion. That's the only time it's false. Any questions about that? Because I see some hesitance with a few of you. Yes?
So for it to be true or false, there's got to be like a fact about it.
It has to be supported by facts. Okay? The converse. If an animal has 6 legs, then it is an adult insect. Look at the facts, look at the statement, determine for yourself whether it's true or false. Give me a thumbs up whether you think it's, give me a thumbs up if you think it's true. Some of us think it's true. Okay, Maria, why do you think it's true?
Because it says if an animal has 6 legs. It's on the science fact it says no other animals, but it's talking about this animal, and it is an animal. An adult insect is an animal.
Okay.
That's true. Then it is an adult insect. That's true. So.
Yeah, the key is this second statement. No other animals have 6 legs. The only animal in our world that has 6 legs is an adult insect. And so the statement is, if an animal has 6 legs, then it must be an adult insect. In other words, if I find an animal that has 6 legs, I have no idea what it is, but I find one and I pick it up. If it has 6 legs, it must be an adult insect because of the facts. So this is true. Any questions about that? All right. What about the inverse? Read the statement, read the facts, decide for yourself whether you think it's true. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's true. Okay, so now we've got 50-50. And that's fine. Brian, why do you think it's true? What fact supports that?
Because since only adult insects have 6 legs, and it says that the animal is not an adult insect and does not have 6 legs.
That's right. From these facts, we conclude that only adult insects have 6 legs. No other animals do. If we pick up an animal that is not an adult insect, I pick up a dog. Okay, that's an animal that is not an adult insect. It does not have 6 legs. That is a true statement. Any questions about that? David?
So insect larvae do have 6 legs.
Okay. Good. Right now we're focused on adult insects, but if we wanted to include others, we could. But I imagine not all of them do. All right, and the contrapositive. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's true. Okay. Kisara, why do you think it's true? Okay. Good. So that is true as well. If an animal does not have 6 legs, so if I pick a dog, that's true. A dog does not have 6 legs. Then it is not an adult insect. That is also true. And I cannot think of any example that would make that not true. Can you think of any animal that does not have 6 legs but is an adult insect? Brandon? So, now he brings up a very important idea, which is extreme cases. And this has come up in all of my classes. Okay? So we're not talking about extreme, unusual, or fantasy cases. We're talking about mainstream, normal ideas, supported by factual information. Yes, there are always exceptions, but that's not really what we're talking about, okay? We can make up a whole bunch of wild, wacky instances that would make this difficult. But we're trying to work through the idea of logic, and so we want to deal with just the average, everyday ideas, okay? Go ahead.
So if it has a side effect, but then it's like old and then it's not isn't true anymore, and you're doing that problem,
Let's see if it comes up. If it comes up, we'll talk about it, okay? Here and then here.
I'm just making what I saw the first time, but I just noticed that both of the statements for the hypothesis and the conclusion were true, and everything else came out true.
Correct.
I'm not sure if this question is different or like if I interpreted it wrong, but last night I read the lesson and it said that if the first one is true, then the contrapositive is true and the converse and inverse are false.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I was on the phone with a colleague of mine who I taught with over the summer who teaches geometry at Lions Creek Middle. And he's been teaching it for years, and as I've told you, this is my first year teaching it. I got confused by that too, because I saw that, and I also read that a few other places, and then I saw this example, and I got very confused. So I called him, and he told me, don't focus on that idea that the top one is supposed to be true, the bottom one's true, and then the 2 middle one is false. He said it's not accurate. It's not. And so we can already see that there's a case where it's not true. That didn't happen, right? So I apologize, and I'm very pleased that this came up because it's important. There's going to be things that are in the textbook that aren't, exactly the way they should be, or that experience teaches us just don't really work out. Okay? I really am glad you brought it up because I focused on the same thing. So at 9 o'clock this morning, he was at work, I was here, and I was on the phone with him, and he kind of explained a bunch of this. This is what he told me to do, and what I'm telling you to do. Forget about patterns. Write each statement and analyze each one at a time. Don't say, oh, because this is true, then that must be true, and if this is true, that must be true. Don't do that. Just analyze each one at a time, and you will be fine. Okay? And just so you know, he had 60 students last year in geometry honors. Every single one of them got a 5, except for one student. So the guy knows what he's talking about. All right? Any comments or questions? So now let's look at a different one and see how it plays out this time. So, example 1b. Again, you don't have to write the instructions, but you need to read them to make sure you're familiar with what's going on. So we have this fantasy character named Maria. And the statement is, the conjecture is, if Maria's birthday is February 29th, then she was born in a leap year. We're going to write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Then we will identify the truth value of each one. So, this is still a we do. We're working on this together. So let's start with the converse. What do you think it will be? Let's see who can just be courageous and go ahead and say it. Go ahead, Dalton.
If Maria's birthday is February 29th, then... Oh, wait, no. No. If her...
Okay, I appreciate you trying. You'll get it, Sebastian.
If Maria was born in a leap year, then her birthday is on February 29th?
Yes. If Maria was born in a leap year, then her birthday is February 29th. So what Dalton was struggling with was, where do you pull the words from? And so it's not just simply taking this whole phrase and moving it to the left and this whole phrase moving to the right. You have to jumble some of the words, but you have to find the core idea. Born in a leap year is the conclusion. Birthday, February 29th, is the hypothesis. Does anyone have any questions on how he formed the converse? All right, the inverse. How do we form the inverse? Michaela?
By adding the negation.
Good. So what do you think it's going to be?
If Maria's birthday is not February 29th, then she was not born in those years.
Beautifully done. If Maria's birthday is not February 29th, then she was not born in a leap year. Any questions about that? And now the contrapositive is putting them both together. Go ahead, Maria.
If Maria was not born in a leap year, then she was not born on February 29th.
Very good. And I'm figuring out what works for me as we do this. And so for me, I'm looking at the converse, and I'm putting the word not in there. To me, that makes the most sense. I don't know what works for you. Do whatever. So I already started wrong. If Maria was not born in a leap year, then her birthday is not February 29th. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I'm just getting like a little bit. I'm getting a little confused with converse and inverse.
As far as how to construct them? All right, we'll just give it some time. To be honest, eventually it'll be super easy for you to form them. It's the hard part to do the truth value. So let's start with the original conditional statement. If Maria's birthday is February 29th, then she was born in a leap year. Now, there's no fact up there. So where do we get the facts from? Catalina? Okay, so where does the information come from? From your brain. And so you have to have some background knowledge. You may end up having to analyze something that you don't have any background knowledge about. Like the blood vessels with the veins. If you didn't know anything about that, you might not be able to analyze. So then you would have to look up something. But in this case, I think it's fairly common knowledge that, like you said, a leap year is every 4 years. And what's special about February 29th? Why is that like the day that was picked? Davis?
Because it's the only day that's not usually in a regular year. It's only on a weekend.
Wow, you explained that beautifully. What a great explanation. So we have to really be aware of the actual facts. So if Maria's birthday is February 29th, then she was born in a leap year. Give me a thumbs up if you think that's true. Good. So I think most of you realize that, yeah, that is true. We have facts to support that. But now let's look at the converse. Read it to yourself, think about the facts, and decide whether you think it's true or false. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you think it's true. Okay, I got a few people. So now I have some disagreement. Okay, so I'm going to assume if you don't have your thumb up, then you think it's false. So Brandon, why do you think this is false?
Because in a leap year is not just February 29th, also February 28th.
That's it? Just February 27th, 28th, 29th?
There's more days in the year in a leap year than February 29th.
Okay, so he's right. If Maria was born in a leap year, her birthday could be the 29th, but I can find a counterexample. Maria's birthday could be September 22nd. So that would mean that this part was true. Maria was born in a leap year, but the conclusion would be false. And as you learned last time, if you have true and then false, the whole statement is false. And so in this case, we can find a counterexample. And so this is false. Any questions about that? So my students who thought it was true, Kayla, do you see now why it's false? Should that make sense? Okay, now let's look at the inverse. If Maria's birthday is not February 29th, then she was not born in a leap year. Use facts and analyze. What do you think? Give me a thumbs up if you think that's true. Good. Wow, we are catching on. That is false. Could someone explain? Why is this false? Go ahead, Sebastian.
Because she could have been born on a leap year, but not on February 29th.
That's right. So it's very similar to the converse. If Maria's birthday is not February 29th, so let's pick one that's not February 29th, I said September 22nd. So Maria's birthday is September 22nd, then she was not born in a leap year. That could be false. She could have been born in a leap year on September 22nd. Any questions about that? All right, now the contrapositive. Analyze it. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's true. So now I got some split. All right, Feng, why do you think that that's true?
February 29th is a day that's in a leap year, but when it's not a leap year, there was no February 29th.
That's right. So if Maria was not born in a leap year, so like 2013, if Maria was born in 2013, then her birthday is not February 29th. That's true. It couldn't be because there was no February 29th in 2013. And so this is a true statement because we cannot find a counterexample. We cannot find a case where this is true and that's false. Any questions about that? Yes, and I'll talk to you about that after, okay? And I did talk to him about that this morning. So any comments or questions on this? Okay, so checkpoint number 1. Now you work it out on your own. You are going to do the converse, inverse, contrapositive, and then you tell me the truth values of all 4 statements, the original and the 3 that you write. Takes a little time. The other class that I did this with took about 3 minutes, so I'll put 3 minutes on the clock. basically take the whole then part and switch it with the whole if part and then fix the grammar. Does that make sense? You know what I mean by fix the grammar? I'm going to assume, and it could be flawed thinking, but I'm going to assume that you guys were able to construct the statements. So I want to focus team talk time on the truth value. And so your discussion should be about the truth value of the statements. Did you all get the same truth values? Did you not? If you didn't, can you convince the other person why? What counterexample can you use to convince them that you're right and they're wrong? So 2 minutes, team talk. I'm discovering, remember, I'm learning this just like you. I did for the contrapositive is I went back to the converse. Basically, we're basically going to rewrite the converse here, but then insert the word not in there. That makes sense?
No, but it's actually saying if an animal is a cat, it does have four paws. That's true. What cat? What this has four paws? No, I got that. No. What cat doesn't have four paws? So and it gives a prosthetic. So it's that one. That's true.
You didn't put a true value for the last one.
It's
Yeah. Oh, you put that in the
wait. Yeah, you're worth it.
And you guys all agree?
You're worth $10. Wow. You're not worth $10. Oh, I mean, you're not famous. Fine, because you're not famous for you. That is a good price from what I had. Still more things. Mine, did you say it's too much? I didn't like it. I like the Converse pairs. I didn't like it.
Okay, so let's come back as a whole group. Give me a thumbs up if you and your teammates eventually agreed on the truth values. Give me a thumbs up if you and your teammates eventually agreed. Okay, good. And it's okay if you don't. That's fine. That's what the discussion is about. So, could I have a volunteer give me the converse and its truth value? Converse and its truth value. We'll start with Danielle. And what was your truth value? And that is correct. If an animal has four paws, then it is a cat. We have a counterexample. What's the counterexample for that? What's a simple one, Alyssa? A dog. A dog has four paws, but it is not a cat, so that's true, that's false, that makes the whole thing false. What about the inverse? Give me the statement and the truth value. Michaela.
If an animal is not a cat, then it does not have four paws.
And what was your truth value?
False.
Maria, do you agree? Did you have the same one? So the inverse is, if an animal is not a cat, then it does not have four paws. That is false. What about the contrapositive? Contrapositive. Dalton, who's been working extremely hard to digest all this.
If an animal does not have four paws, then it is not a cat.
And what was your truth value?
False.
You had the right contrapositive, but that is a true statement.
Oh,
If an animal does not have four paws, could it be a cat? Now, don't go to the disgusting, oh, well, what about the cat who had his arm torn off? Because that's exactly what one of your peers in another group said. But that's not what we're talking about, and that's why I was happy that Brandon brought up the unusual case. We're not talking about unusually wacky cases. We're talking about the normal case. If an animal does not have 4 paws, it cannot be a cat, and that's a true statement. Yes?
This isn't an extreme case, but I don't have 4 paws and I'm a cat.
Okay. So, thank you for wasting 30 seconds of my life. All right. Now, I am behind. I'm not behind schedule. We finished enough that you've got the bulk of the lesson, but there's a little bit more that I'm going to go quickly to. We were going to do another one because I really want to reinforce this. We don't have time, and that's my fault. But there's another idea. Don't do anything. I just want you to look. The second idea is being able to say whether something is true or false and supporting it with definitions and facts that you know that you've learned. So, for example, we have a diagram here, and we have a statement. Line AC is perpendicular to line BD. Line AC is perpendicular to line BD. Is that true or false? And if it's true, what definition or fact can you use to support it? So you're going to actually have to explain your answers using facts. Now, I'm going to put the answer key to the homework, as I said, up at 4:30. You may not have the exact same definition, but as long as the core idea is there, then you're fine. So you're going to have to use your maturity and your honesty to decide whether or not you got something right. And if you're not sure, then you ask me. Okay? But you're going to have to look at diagrams and be able to determine whether something's true and support it with real facts. You are not allowed to say it is because it is. So let me show you one example. So I did this one with the other group because we had a longer block. And look at the second question. It says, point M is the midpoint of FH. So everyone look at the diagram. Point M is the midpoint of FH. Give me a thumbs up if you think that's true. Okay? Good. So tons of you put your thumbs up, and you're all wrong. But it's not because you're wrong because you did something bad. It's because you're still not used to the fact that you have to be able to prove every little thing. And there is no evidence in this picture that says that the M is right in the middle. There has to be something there that proves it. For example, let me go back here. What proves that these are perpendicular? There's a detail that proves it. Chris? How do you know it's a right angle? Yeah, this mark here is critical. If that mark wasn't there, look at this. What if this was the picture? Would you be able to say that that's true? No. It looks like it might be true, but you cannot say it's true because you do not have evidence. And so you have to be very careful. And so here's what the evidence would look like. If you saw this, what do those marks mean? Kayla?
Good afternoon, teachers and students. It is now time for the afternoon announcement.
Okay.
The following students, please report to the front office. Madison Gentry, Joshua Thomas, and Sean Sutton, please report to the front office. Any girl or boy that would like to become a cheerleader, there will be an informational meeting held on September 15th at 4:30. Once again, anyone that would like to be a part of the cheerleading squad, there will be an informational meeting on September 15th at 4:30.